Okay, here's another foil file. We can call this part 2. That is a little bit more involved, rather than just having a border like we did on the other one, the model image, where it's a simple border that gets foiled on top of the graphic. This one's a little bit more work to it. So what we're looking at right now on the screen is the file that needs to be foiled. So it looks like there's 4 different foil colors. There's the gold, the pink, the silver, and the magenta. And then it looks like you have some text here on 4 of the squares, where the black is going to be coming through the foil. So in this instance, what you have to do is you have to create a knockout on the foil layer so that the black text that gets printed, in this case it's for lambda, comes through underneath after the foiling is done. So I'm not going to go ahead and start showing how to change all these colors and whatnot, but basically just looking at this outer edge is the foiling part, but what we would need to do is bleed it to the inside, or maybe just bring it in a couple of points, or fully bleed it in, so that way when it gets cut out here, there's no chance for misregistration. So we already have a file somewhat prepped, which is this one. And this is actually our final file before we go to PDF. So what we have here is we've designated the 4 foil colors in respective layers. We just call them foil 1, 2 silver, 3 peach, 4 gold. Again, in your swatch palette, there are swatches associated with each color, made as a spot color and named as such. So you can do that for every single color like we already have in this example. And we have the cut contours here that's going to be cut out. So what the foiler is going to do is going to have to make these squares, just fill them, and then when he gives it back to us, we'll just cut that way we have a clean, accurate border. The printing part is basically this. Okay, this is going to be our lambda or Epson print that we're going to be giving to the foil vendor, and then he's going to be doing this part to it. What we have to make sure that we do, because there is text here, let's go back to the original. This text here on these 4 squares is part of the printing, which you can see here. But in order for it to show through the foil, it needs to have a knockout on the foil layer. We have to designate that, like I have here. I just put it all the way at the top, called it foil knockout, so that way when we send him the foil PDF, nothing is going to be put into these where it's white. There's not going to be any foil where there's white. So what we have to do is we have to go back. You can see if I turn off all these layers here, the foil layers, and I just leave the foil KO, the black stroke, that's my trap. So you have to stroke anything that is going to be printing. You have to add a stroke to it. I think generally, from what Sharon has said, is the vendor likes a 2-point stroke. I only added a 1-point stroke here because the text is pretty small. Okay, in theory, you could just make a black box. But for some reason or other, I don't know if it's for the lambda or for the epson, I think it might be the epson, the foil doesn't adhere that well to any ink that's black. So we've gone through that issue in the past, so I think we just want to add a stroke to anything that is going to have foil on top of it. Again, in this case, I added 1 point stroke because the text is pretty small, and we got that approved by the vendor. They said that's fine, but I think the general rule is 2 points. If you're not sure and I'm not here, go ahead and ask Sharon, send an email, or go see her, send us both an email, and she'll reply to you and let you know if 1 or 2 point is okay. All right, so what you have to do first, this is the original size of the text without the stroke, right? With the stroke, it's without. So when you knock this out of the foil layer, it has to be the original size. Obviously, you're not going to put a stroke on the foil knockout because then you're actually altering the art. So what we did here was we selected the original copy that's going to be have foil on top, copy, paste it, and then I brought it up to its own layer up here and just called it foil knockout. Then I went back to the original black text, called it copy trap, and then you can see what it does to it. That is your trap. Okay, that's how it originally is, but then adding the 1 point or 2 point, in this case 1 point, that makes the trap. It is going to print that way with the stroke. Okay, so again, anything that has foil that's going to be put on top, that is going to be knocked out of the foil layer, the underneath graphic or text or logo or whatever it is, has to have a stroke on it so that it traps correctly when the vendor creates his die for the foil. Okay. Then everything else gets turned on. And lastly, the KO, which again is the original size of the text, is on my topmost layer. I think that's pretty clear. Everything is organized, so I'm only including what I need. So I have my cut contour, which is the internal dies. I have my perimeter trim, which is the size of the graphic. And your foil layers, your art, which in this case is just copy, and then I called the bottommost layer copy trap, which again is just stroked. It's good to be organized because when you create your PDF with the layers and then you bring that back into InDesign, you're going to see it just like this. And because you organized it and you called out the name of the layers, you're going to know exactly what to turn on and what they mean and what to turn off. If you have miscellaneous layers here from the client, let's say you had a type safety layer and it's called TS, and even though it's off, and if you had some other layers that don't really pertain to the output, when you save your PDF with layers and you bring that into InDesign, you're going to see all that stuff there too. It just gets a little bit too convoluted and confusing. So I think if we do it where we're organized, that is the key. Okay, so this goes saved again as this is the key here, create Acrobat layers from top, and that is also an option in InDesign if you're working on an InDesign Creative. And we would save it. And then you get the icon, the layer icon here. And you'll see the layers are named exactly the way I named them. Okay. So then once again, you would open up an InDesign document, create your form size, which I have here. This is my original working, right, which is this file, Illustrator. And then over here, I called this one Foil Comp. And I think we can all just call them Foil Comp. This one I can rename and call it Foil Comp. Okay, so here, I open that up. Initially I made it to the size of this graphic here, 15.14 by 7.47, and I did a file place. Right, so it is file place, you find your file, show import options. This is kind of critical. I set it to crop. If you have it set to visible layers only, it's not going to work. We already found that out. So you have to set it up to crop. Bring it in. Okay, and again, when I first made my document, I made it to this size, the 15.14 by 7.47, which is the final size of the creative when it goes into the stores. But the paperwork said that, I think Doug Crawford is doing these, and he wants an inch from the actual trim, which is this, on each side. I think they call that a gripper. Could be wrong. Sounds right. So I just made my InDesign document an inch bigger, as you can see, 17 by 9.47, right? Where are my layers? In InDesign, when you go to make your form, you have to create the dots, right? I did that. I create a cut contour, exterior layer, which I designated as cut contour from our library right here. And now I'm ready to actually start making my 3 files that are derived from this one. So again, you're going to have a print file, you're going to have a foil file, and you're going to have a cut contour or an iCut file. But you have to do this first. So you place your art, right? And then you make your exterior, which is the size of the perimeter, overall perimeter. And again, when you go to rip this, this is enable in your cutting dialog box. You don't want it enable disabled, because then it won't print. You want it to print, just this outer exterior border. Always want that to print, because again, at cutting they want to see that the blade is cutting directly on the line, so there's no misregistration. So now we are ready to start making our different files. So the way you do that again, this is a recap from the first video. Select it, Object, Layer Options, turn off what you don't need. So in this case, I just want my print file. I'm making my print file. And this is all that's printing. So this is your first step. You save that out. This would be saved out into the PDF output folder. And I believe we already have one there. Yes, we do. And we called it print. Okay, it's this one. This is my print file, just as you see it here. This is what we're printing here at the plant in Burbank, either on the Lambda or the Epson. So once I have that file saved, then I go back in here Object, Object Layer Options. Now I want to make my foil file, so I turn on all my foil layers, including the KO. And this is what I have. And then I would save this into PDF for foil. Okay, if that folder doesn't exist, make it. Then you end up with this file here. Right? So again, the white text is your KO, so nothing is going to be foiling there. But underneath it, you're going to see the black, same words underneath it with the stroke for the trap. So again, ultimately, it's going to be black, because the black ink is going to be showing through the foil. But you have to make sure that you have it set up on the foil file for the vendor. If you don't have this here KO'd and you just have the solid color, he's going to foil right on top of the black text, and then we're going to be in a bad spot. Okay, lastly, go back here, turn on your cut. So all you have is your iCut. And then we save this file into the iCut folder. Okay. That's basically it. I don't want to make the video too much longer, but I want to point something out, because as I was doing these, this would be the setup that we would need for if we were vending out to a company called Aggressive. So we use Aggressive, we use Doug Crawford once in a while, even though we haven't used him, and we were going to use Aggressive for this project, but they need a quick turnaround and he couldn't do it, so Doug is going to do it. We would still do the same process, but Doug wants one extra step. He wants a final layered PDF showing the spot colors as individual spot colors, and he might be cutting, so I also put the cut contours on there. So that's why you have in the PDF for files, PDF for foil folder, there's actually only 2 files for this project, but you have a foil file here, 2901D, and then you have 2901D foil comp Doug, because he wants them set up a little bit different. And then you have the B file, the O2 file, B and B. And the difference here is when I have this file here that doesn't say Doug on it, and I open up the PDF, there's no layers. And this would work fine for Aggressive. Actually, for Aggressive, and this is really, really key, you have to bring this, and I might have said this in the first video, you have to bring this file into Illustrator and save it as an AI10. So remember, if it's for Aggressive, he needs this saved as an AI10. He won't accept a PDF file. For Doug wanted it, I did a different setup for him where we do have the layers. So he wants to see all this stuff. So all the foils, that's on one layer, the silver's on one layer, the peach color, gold, and then the KO. And he might be cutting it, so he has the cut contours in here too. So whether or not he cuts it, he can use this file. If he doesn't cut it, he can send it back to us, and we already have the iCut file for us as well. So Doug wanted it set up this way, so what I did was, once I created this file here, which has everything, I actually opened it in Illustrator and separated everything out, and then resaved the PDF with layers. I guess I could have done it a different way too, but that's just how my mind was thinking at that moment in time this morning. Hope that's not too confusing. It just depends really on who's going to be doing the additional work for us, the outside work for us. We just have to ask. Okay, so that's what I really wanted to touch on in this video, was setting the trap for anything that has graphics printing underneath it. but there's a foil on top. Remember, you have to add a stroke to whatever is printing, and on the knockout layer, that does not get a stroke, but it has to be designated as a knockout. So ultimately, for this job, this is what's going to print, and we're going to cut this out to the perimeter. That stays on, that cut contour. We send this form to Doug. He's going to take this printed piece. Then he's going to take his foil dies, do whatever he wants to do with this on top of the printed piece, and then either cut it himself. So if he cuts it here and there, then it's just going to be a border like we saw the original artwork, and the text down here. If he doesn't cut it, if he just foils it, then he sends it back to us and we'll do the cutting. But we're set up. We have an iCut file, right, for both PDFs. We have the foil files, and we have the output files for printing. Again, that's mostly what I wanted to bring up in part 2 of the foiling video. If you have any questions, you can come and ask me. Thank you.